Mini retirements can be a fantastic practice for full retirement. And they're able to pivot between these seasons of work and these seasons of rest and really get the best of both worlds.
Welcome to Retire Today. I'm your host, Jeremy Keil, and we're here to help you create your dream retirement. Today, we're talking with Jillian Johnsrud about mini retirements. Jillian, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, and I mentioned mini retirements. So I talk about retiring today. Your book is Retire Often. Tell me about this idea of mini retirements. Maybe just give us a definition. I'm talking about retiring all the time, like just hang up your shingle and be done with it.
Yeah.
But you're talking about mini retirements. What is a mini retirement?
Yeah, I think that traditional, model, you work 30, 40 years and then you retire once for the rest of your life. So retiring often is different. Many retirements I define with three characteristics. The first is a month or longer. I think a month is kind of the minimum effective dose to recover from burnout, spend time with people you love, go do a cool adventure. The second characteristic is stepping away from your primary career or your 9 to 5. And the third, to focus on something that's meaningful and matters to you. So, this idea of mini retirements is we take this month, 3 months, 6 months, maybe a year. Some people can pull that off at least once in a lifetime. A whole year off is pretty ambitious, and you sprinkle them throughout your working career to where you're able to pivot into seasons of intense work, passionate work, and then seasons of rest and rejuvenation and hobbies and relationships. And I'm kind of proposing this idea of instead of that first model, which I don't think is working fantastic anymore because a lot has shifted in our world and our economy. What if we just move in and out, back and forth between work and retirement? And, perhaps this also enables people to push that traditional retirement age longer. If our lifespans are longer, if we're going to be working longer, instead of saving up all of these retirements till the very end, we can start to enjoy them now. And then there's not as much pressure or, you know, there's not as much like unfulfilled dreams, that long, long bucket list that we have to get to when we're 65.
Yeah, I was just talking to somebody earlier today, and he's about 65. He said, "I'm just tired." Right, and I think you're
Yeah.
saying, "Why wait till you're tired to go do something?
Yes.
Do something when you've got that opportunity to do it." I'm imagining it's kind of this thought of, okay, things are used to be linear. Like you go to school, then you work,
Mhm.
and then you retire. And now it's maybe more of a circular, like a cycle kind of
Mhm.
thing of let's maybe have some schooling and working and
Yeah.
retiring kind of all mixed in together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if I were talking to a 20-year-old, I wouldn't say, "Yep, go to school, get that degree, because you're gonna do that exact same job at one company for 40 years and have a pension at the end." Because the likelihood of that being the model that works is pretty low now. Um, the reality is that a lot of people, their best opportunity to get a significant promotion or raise is by switching companies. And the nature of their work over 40 years might shift a couple times of kind of how they even define their career. Or as they get promoted, the nature of their work might change a lot. And so we might have these natural breaks in between jobs, in between careers, even where you could take a month, you could take 3 months, rest, recover, do cool stuff, and then go back into your career even better, more refreshed, more creative, more energetic. Um, I think mini retirements can actually help people's careers more than is perhaps intuitive.
Well, you said if you could talk to a 20-year-old right now, here's what you'd say. But let's maybe hear from like a 20 or maybe 25-year-old. I imagine that 20, 25-year-old Jillian didn't have this idea of retire often. What was life like? Kind of what brought you to the point where you said, okay, I got to do things a little differently.
Yeah. So it's funny. I stumbled upon the idea when I was 19.
Okay.
Um, because I was reading the Old Testament like all the cool kids do at
Yep.
19, just all the teenagers out here
Mm-hmm.
diving into like Leviticus. Um, but I was really just profoundly struck by this idea of what if you took a year off every 7 years? What if you took a sabbatical year? I was talking about you take 1 day off every 7 days. It's your Sabbath. You take 1 year off every 7 years as your sabbatical year, and it just sparked this creativity and this imagination of what would that look like? What would that be like to have these chunks of time to chase down other dreams and to kind of fulfill these bucket list things? Like, what if we didn't have to wait till we were 65? And, my spouse at the time had every normal question that people have, like, how are we going to pay for this? Is this expensive? What about our jobs? What about our careers? What about healthcare? And I had none of the answers. I was like, I don't know, but we'll figure it out. And so we started on this trajectory, and now 23 years in, I've done a dozen of them. I've coached hundreds of people through this, and there are answers to those questions. Like, how do I afford this? What about my career? How do I take time off? How do I, find healthcare? And so my motivation behind writing the book is I think people like the idea of a mini retirement. It's not a tough sell, but there's so many fears. There's so many questions, so many hesitations. So just trying to work through those one by one.
Yeah, like I said, it's a lot of fears and hesitations. I think it's a lot of assumptions. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking of someone related to traditional retirement. He worked in the healthcare field, and he was basically saying, "I wish I could go back to the days when I was working 40 hours a week, but the company is making me work basically 60 hours a week."
Yeah.
I thought, well, why don't you just go tell them, right? Just go say, "I'm only going to work 3 or 4 days a week." And he said,
Mhm.
"That's never happened before." I said, "Well, give it a shot. Go ask him. What's the worst that's going to happen?" And then he emailed me and said, you'll never believe this. For the first time in the 150-year history of this health system, some of my position, they're letting work 4 days a week." And so,
Nice. Yeah.
who knows what happens? What's the worst case going to happen? He was planning on quitting anyways. He's like, "I'm
Yeah.
quitting because I can't do 60. I want to go to zero.
Mhm.
Because if I wish I could do 40, I'd do that." Well, go ask and see what happens with
Yeah.
that.
Mini retirements can be a fantastic practice for full retirement. And the more you get into it, the more mini retirements you take, the better you get at them. We're humans. We're not great at doing things we've never done before. There's a learning curve the first time. But what I've seen happen is that as you kind of get in this rhythm, you go through I think mini retirements are emotionally fraught and logistically challenging. Like those two things are the price of admission. But the more you go through, the easier it gets. And I have seen people as they get closer to retirement find more interesting work, more meaningful work, work that fits their skill set better, work that has better hours. And they're able to kind of pivot between these seasons of work and these seasons of rest and really get the best of both worlds. They get to do adventures, they get time with people they love, they get to rest and relax and pursue hobbies. But then they also have these seasons of work where, they enjoy being compensated, they enjoy leveraging this extensive knowledge they have, this expertise, these skill sets in a way where they feel very appreciated and like they're making a meaningful contribution. Work can check a lot of boxes, but if we just take the upsides of both and we don't have to deal with the downsides of either, like I can imagine our careers in our 50s and 60s and 70s and maybe even into our 80s, you look at like um Warren Buffett, he's like almost 100, like,
And
and
he's
I'm
loving it.
sure he's not working, like 60 hours a week, but he keeps the amount of work, the type of work that is meaningful and enjoyable um in his life.
Yeah. And you're talking about alternating. It's kind of like you build up maybe that pressures for work, and it's time to release it. Like there's
Mhm.
release valves and steam engines and things, things along those
Mhm.
lines. You're kind of saying you should do this for yourself. I mentioned this individual around you're heading towards 60, and you've got this burnout, right,
Mhm.
from your current career. You talk a lot about burnout in the
Yeah.
book. Tell me a little bit about kind of what you've seen as people are like, what are people feeling and thinking as they're heading towards the burnout, and what would you
Mhm.
say they should do?
Yeah. Um Burnout is interesting. I kind of a rule of um what I've observed is if people do about 20 years, sometimes 15, depending how intense, of hard work, maybe 15, sometimes people have a really high capacity to suffer and they can do like 20, 25 years of hard work. But right around that season of continuous hard work, the body is like, yeah, I need a break. Like that was, you ran a marathon and it's like, I did good, but like I need a few days to recover before we start the next marathon.
You've been saving your whole life for retirement, but how do you actually retire? My name's Jeremy Keil, and I take my clients through a 5-step retirement planning process so they can be ready for retirement. I put that whole process into my book, Retire Today, so that you can create your retirement master plan in 5 simple steps. If you're trying to create your retirement plan, head on over to jeremykeil.com, JeremyKeil.com to buy your copy of my new book, Retire Today.
And so for a lot of people, if they started at 20, that's around 40, maybe 45. If they started at 15, they might hit that point at 30 or 35, but around that cycle. And that can look like it's decreased energy, it's decreased motivation, it's decreased creativity. You know, when I was like a teenager, early 20s, I kind of thought middle-aged people were boring. Like they didn't dream big dreams, they weren't ambitious, they weren't excited, they didn't have like that zest for life, they didn't want to pursue goals. And then I got to my 40s and I'm like, oh, they're just tired. Oh, they're just so tired. But with many retirements, I've seen people emotionally, mentally roll back the clock. The longer they've been on their mini retirement, I'm 42, they start to feel like they did when they were 35, when they
Mm-hmm.
were 30, when they were 25. And so I would say, like, think about yourself, because sometimes you're in it for so long that you assume that this baseline is normal, when in reality it's a symptom of burnout. This is not your new
Mm-hmm.
normal. But think about yourself at like 25. How much passion did you have for things? How much motivation? How much optimism? How much courage did you have? Like, were you excited about things? Even simple things like your friends like, hey, after work, I'm going to go do a painting class. Maybe at 25, you're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I always wanted to try painting. That sounds great. And maybe at 55, you're like, I'm so tired. It has been such a long week. I can't even go outside. Like, I've changed my clothes. I'm in my pajamas. The idea of putting regular clothes back on is so overwhelming, let
Mm-hmm.
alone driving. Um, that's burnout. That's
Yep.
burnout. And so if you give yourself that time to rest, you start to roll back that clock, and who your personality was when you were younger. You might still, your physical body has aged. It might still need better sleep, more rest between workouts. Those things are a reality. But kind of what your personality is, like, you don't have to become boring. You might just be tired.
Yeah, I got a feeling it is. I think you hit it on the head. That it's more the tired than the boring. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
When you're talking about, okay, this sounds like kind of the fountain of youth. This mini retirement sound like a fountain of
Mm.
youth, and that'd be great. But I'm curious how we get there. You give us 4 different steps
Yeah.
in the book. So you have 4 steps in the book. The first one is going from dreams to plans. If we're trying to find this fountain of youth in a mini retirement, how do we go from dreams to plans?
Yeah, so I find some people on a spectrum, some people have like 47 things on their bucket list. It's very full, very complex, very detailed. They've fully imagined it. And some people have zero. Um, and the people who have zero are terrified of the idea of a mini retirement. Because what would they do with themselves? What would they even do if they didn't go to work? Like, maybe they've bankrupted their personal life a little bit. They don't have a ton of friendships. They don't have a bunch of hobbies. They're not really invested in family relationships. They don't have all these goals and ideas. And so the first step of the book is finding filters, like brainstorm all the things. And I have a few tools in the book I use for that. Like, brainstorm all the things to have a list that really reflects your values and what's meaningful for you. And then filtering it to what should be the next mini retirement. If you end up with this list of 34 things, and the book's called Retire Often. So you don't do all 34 in one mini retirement. Like, it will not go well. I promise. It's a bad idea. It always goes off the rails. But pick 1, 2, 3 of those things for your next mini retirement. And so there's a few different tools that I use to help people through that. Like, depending where you are at in your financial journey, you might want to front load the more affordable ones. If you've got 34 ideas, like, why not start with the kind of cheap ones and then build up as you grow your financial wealth to more expensive ones? Like, last year I took a month off to learn tango. I had $1,000 budget, really affordable. But at some point I really want to do an around the world cruise with my friends. That's very expensive. But the great thing is, people in their 60s and 70s love going on cruises. Like, I can definitely do that then. And that's another filter. Seasons with expiration dates. What's something that if you don't do it in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, that season of life maybe passes you by? Maybe right now your parents are 75 and still healthy enough to where you could go to Europe together and do a riverboat cruise. Um, but if you wait 10 years, maybe not. Maybe your kids are in high school or in college. They're not enmeshed in their own careers. They're not enmeshed in their own families. Like, if you said, hey, you want to come to Europe with me for a month? My treat. They're like, we're in. That sounds great. But if you wait 10 years, what are the odds that they can also get a month off at the same time as you? So those are some things to kind of think about when choosing the next mini retirement.
Yeah. Well, it's in your book you wrote, save the money, make a plan, and when the opportunity
Mhm.
arises, grab your go bag and
Yeah.
go. And I think part of the go bag is a bit of the cash to have ready to go.
Yeah.
A bit of the go bag is, where am I going to go? Right.
Mhm.
You got these lists, not necessarily bucket lists, you want to call that, or you could call it that, but these lists of ideas of
Yeah.
what do I want to do? And if you've saved the money and you know what you're going to do next, something might happen where maybe you lose your job, or
Yeah.
there's something that happens where you have the opportunity to go do some things. You mentioned that quite a bit of where you don't necessarily have to try to plan this out in a way of like, okay, next summer I'm going to take off for the summer. Things just might happen, right? You might
Yeah.
walk in on a Friday and they say, this is your last day coming in.
Mhm.
And instead of sitting around kind of feeling sorry for yourself, you can say, well, this is my opportunity. I think you shared a story in the book of how you were in your 20s and that basically happened to you. Like, you lost your job, you're
Mhm.
kind of down in yourself. And then what happened next?
Yeah, there again, this mini retirement go bag is the idea that there are planned mini retirements, but sometimes they're unexpected. Life happens. And so how can we prepare for that? And I did unexpectedly was unemployed. And it's such a hard emotional thing. It's easy to kind of sit in that fear or anxiety, like, I'm going to find the next thing. What should the next thing be? Like, I'm bummed that, like, I don't have the last thing. But I had been thinking about kind of these, what are things that we want to do? What are things that matter to us? And one of those was, we had just adopted our oldest, and I really wanted to take him back to Montana. We were living at DC in the time, and I had a bunch of family that was getting together there that I hadn't seen. So it was like a little bit of a family reunion, and the timing was great. And it was a beautiful season in Montana. Um, we were going to go to Glacier National Park, was right nearby. And so, because, like, all of a sudden I had the time and I had a little bit of cash saved, we took that leap. And it was actually emotionally the hardest one. Like I said, they're logistically challenging, emotionally fraught. This one wasn't very logistically challenging because I had the time and the money, but it was emotionally fraught. Um, and it was probably the most difficult in that sense for me. But we had an amazing experience. I would say it was probably our best vacation with Micah.
Well, it's great you got the chance to do that, because you had the courage, but you also had a bit of the plan. Like, you had the thought
Hmm.
of, okay, I want to go to Glacier. I've got the money saved up, and then sometimes you just have to pull the trigger and go. And you thankfully went,
Yeah.
and you've had that family memory, right,
Yeah.
for years now.
Yeah.
I just mentioned the idea of kind of be ready for it. Like,
Mhm.
okay, I got let go. Great. Let me go make the best use of it. But a lot of times more, I'm imagining this is more planned. And when it is planned, you talk a lot about how there's some unexpected career benefits to taking mini retirements. How is this that I can take time off of work and then come out ahead financially? How does that work out?
Yeah. It's probably the most counterintuitive idea behind the book that I think it's easy for people to see, yeah, this would be good for my personal life. I could rest, spend time with people I love, take care of myself. But the assumption is it would be bad for my career and bad financially. And I've seen over and over and over it be beneficial to people's careers and to their career trajectory and beneficial for them financially. And there's a lot of different ways that this can happen. Like I think about it like there's lots of different levers and each mini retirement doesn't pull all of the levers, but it usually pulls one or two of them. And sometimes that's unexpected, which ones that mini retirement's going to unlock just because there's some serendipity involved with it. But like I said earlier, one of the great ways to get a raise or a promotion is by switching jobs. And a mini retirement provides the perfect motivation and extra benefit of for when you switch jobs. Not only do you get rested, you come back refreshed, more creative, more energetic, like you bring a different energy into your next job, which helps you perform better, but you might get a substantial raise. Um, I had a friend who um took a year off, took a year-long mini retirement. When he came back, he got a 50% raise, um, which kind of sounds cool, but it was indicative of something worse. Uh, it was because he had been at his previous employer for 15 years, which means he had been underpaid for a
Mm-hmm.
long time. And a little bit of a math nerd, like, let's say he had been underpaid for 8 years. And let's imagine he was being paid 100,000 and now he was earning 150. So he had been underpaid $50,000 for 8 years. That's $400,000. And let's say his mini retirement cost him 100,000 because that's what he normally made. He still would have been $300,000 ahead if he had taken mini retirements consistently throughout his working career. But even more than that, when we think about the financial implications of our lifetime earning trajectory and potential, that 300,000, he was about 40, invested. Well, shoot, by the time he's 60, 65, 70, that's an easy $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
He came out $1 million behind because of not taking those strategic career breaks. And so a lot of things can happen. You come back different with different energy. You find better jobs. You increase that lifetime earning potential. Um, but he actually also, during that mini retirement, considered a career pivot. It could be really tough to imagine a career pivot while you're in the thick of it. And so he took some classes, he took some training, and he was even offered a job in this new career field. So, like, the training worked. Ultimately, he turned that down and went back to his previous career field. But for a lot of people, being able to pivot into a new career is what helps them extend their working years. Like they might have done 20, 30 years in an industry and they're like, I'm toast. I'm toast in this industry. It's just so burned out, so uninterested. But if they get to do something new, something different, something that they're passionate about, something that's a better skill set for them now, instead of retiring at 55, they might be like, or maybe 60, or maybe 65. And if they've done these mini retirements throughout, there's not that huge motivation of like, I need to retire at 65 because I have to catch up on all of these dreams that I didn't give any time to. No, they did it. They did the cooking class in Italy for a month. They did a big road trip with their kids when their kids were little. They went, backpacking through Ireland with their parents. Like they've had all of these incredible experiences. So they don't have that same desperation to retire right now.
Yeah, that's just, and desperation is really the right word, because I was talking to somebody recently, and he was saying 59 and a half, 59 and a half.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
guess gotta, put my head down.
Yeah,
I just gotta like put up with it to 59 and a half, and then I'll be free. And it's kind of like, well,
yeah.
what? You're basically saying, why don't you just free yourself up now? And maybe your official retirement date is 65 instead of 59 and a half, but maybe you just enjoy the whole time ahead of time, right? Instead of
Yeah.
not enjoying it and then saying, this is the best thing in the world. Like, maybe let's bring some of that forward and bring
Mhm.
some of the enjoyment time forward. Oh, there you go. There's time value of money. There's some time value of joy. Let's get some of the
Yeah.
joy showing up earlier. Speaking of earlier, I was reading you've got a few quotes. You got quite a few people that have taken mini retirements. The first one I saw in there was somebody named Darlene, and
Mm,
I'm just going to basically read it verbatim because it just described exactly what I think a lot of people are thinking right now. Where
mhm.
she said, "I wish I had this book earlier in my life, as it would have helped me transition into retirement had I done a few mini retirements first." Her favorite quote is, "Without a plan, you'll miss 50% of the benefits of a mini retirement can offer." Which makes sense for retirement too. Had I done some of the work suggested in this book, I could have saved a year and a half of regretting my decision and second guessing myself. So
Mhm.
there's Darlene. Tell me a little bit more about Darlene. She is wishing she's. I'm just imagining. Let's see how close I am. I'm just imagining she's kind of like the person I mentioned, where she's just putting her head down, getting her work done. Can't wait till that day of retirement. She pulls the triggers and then wonders, like, did I do the right thing? Did I make a mistake? Did I just give up this big
Mhm.
paycheck coming in? She's regretting. She's not enjoying her retirement.
Yeah.
She's regretting it for those first 18 months.
Yeah, and she ended up having an amazing career transition into consulting. And she is one of those people that drifts now, seasons of resting and relaxing and doing things she loves, and seasons of work in something that's meaningful. And she has so much expertise and so much knowledge and such an amazing skill set that she's incredibly valued and appreciated. And I think I love Darlene, but I think she's a great example of, like, you can have all of the benefits of both, of work and retirement, um, and very little of the downsides of either. You know, some of those downsides of retirement, it can be a tough transition, but it can be tough for people who've earned money their whole life. They like earning money. It feels great. It makes them feel valued. And then they're not earning money. And maybe they liked saving money and they liked investing money, and that felt good too. And now they're not
Mm-hmm.
investing. They're actually stealing money from that piggy bank, which feels a little awkward and weird. Um, I've worked with a lot of clients who wanted to retire early and then volunteer, find something meaningful and enjoyable that leveraged their knowledge and their skill set. And it sounds like a great idea. And when it works, it is. But those roles are actually a little tricky to find really meaningful um, volunteer roles that tick all those boxes that your job gave you.
Yeah, well, and even with retirement, my wife, when she was staying at home with the kids, she
Mhm.
volunteered all the time. Her
Yeah.
resume is just filled with volunteer, like heading up committee
Mhm.
assignments, doing all kinds of things in the school. And most of the time, she'd come home and say, "They respect you a lot more when they pay you."
Yes.
Or it's they, like I'm spending all this time, but I don't have a title. And so
Yeah.
it's interesting, like you want to work and then volunteer. It's like if you kind of do a little bit of both, like you're getting
Mhm.
in Darlene's world, she's probably doing some things that she enjoys doing.
Mhm.
She's making some money on it, but it's almost volunteer like in a way of she could show up or not show up, right? If you're a
Yeah.
consultant, you could take that gig or not
Yeah.
take the gig. So just having that flexibility is a huge thing. And I think you made yourself some flexibility into the way you set up your life because you mentioned that it's been 23 years in the mini retirement journey. You've
Yeah.
taken at least a dozen.
Yeah.
So that's you went beyond, right? So you're talking in the Old Testament. That's what gave you the idea. That's one out of every
Yeah.
7 years. You're doing
Yeah.
one out of every 2 years.
Yeah.
Although it's a Sabbath year, I'm curious. Have you taken a full year mini retirement? How's that? What's the
Yeah.
longest retirement you've taken, and how did that? How was life kind of before and after that? Whatever
Mhm.
was your longest mini retirement?
Yeah, the longest was about a year, 18 months. Initially it was we had planned to take a year off. And then after a year, we're like, that was good. We should keep going.
Hmm.
um, and then it was a career pivot. After about 18 months, one of the things on kind of my list when we took that time off was I wanted to do something with writing. I'd always wanted to write more. And so during that time off, I started writing. I started blogging about personal finance and financial independence. And that was almost exactly 10 years ago now.
Hmm.
And and I have a book out about it.
Yeah.
So basically an overnight success because it only took
Yeah.
me a decade. Um,
Exactly.
but I never would have had that mental space, that mental bandwidth to pursue a different career. This is very different than what I did before. I sold furniture, I did commission sales, I worked at Starbucks, I worked at REI, like I worked for small businesses, corporations, like I didn't do anything self-employed or creative by any means. And I think I see a lot of people, especially around like 55, early 50s, who have been very successful in their career, but there's still that, but I always thought maybe I always thought maybe there was something else that I would like to do. Maybe I could be self-employed. Maybe I could do this other career field. And they have the sense of urgency that if I don't do it by 60, um, I'll probably just stick with my regular career. By 60, I've only got 5 more years left. We'll just push through and like give up those like childish dreams. Um, but a mini retirement could allow you to explore that, to test that out a little bit, to say, is there something else I would like that maybe it is that career that I would be happy to do until I was 70, even if it pays a little bit less. The hours are different, the work's different, the coworkers are different. Um, so mini retirement serves that function really well.
Yeah. I like the idea of this mini retirement. I'm going through here. That is chapter 3 in my book of Retired Today is do what you want when you want. That's kind of
Yeah.
my message to 60-year-olds is do what you want when you want. And you're
Yeah.
saying, why wait till you're 60? Go ahead with a mini retirement. And I think the best thing around that, it's kind of like you've been planning for retirement. You've been saving
Mhm.
for retirement. Uh, do you have to put the exact date on it of down the road? Right?
Yeah.
You said I said it before, but save the money, make a plan, and go. And
Yeah.
the go part doesn't have to necessarily be the traditional, age 62 or whatever it is. The go part can be following that advice of do what you want when you
Yeah.
want, as long as you got some savings and a plan. I think that
Yeah.
makes sense. Awesome. Well, Jillian, I've got one more question for you. Before that, tell us what's the best way to reach out to you.
Yeah, online, retireoften.com. You can find my book, group coaching, consulting. I have a crazy newsletter if you like weird random thoughts by me at random intervals. That's what that's about. And then on social media, I'm at Jillian Johnsrud.
All right. We'll make sure we have links to all that in the show notes and the YouTube comments. And of course, if you'd like to learn how to create your traditional retirement master plan, I've got 5 simple steps to do that. Head over to 5stepretirementplan.com. All right, Jillian, my final question for you is tell us something about yourself that few people know about. And remember, this podcast is rated clean.
Nice. I well for the video people, I started a food forest, which I think I talk about in the book. And part of that is I grow a whole bunch of herbs. And I got really into research, reading like medical research on herbs. And so I make herbal tea now. I have this weird, like my throat's a little sore. So I went out in the garden today and picked a bunch of herbs. And so it's a fun hobby for me. I dry herbs and I make the occasional cup of herbal tea.
That's great. Now we get the visual too, because in your bio it says things you enjoy doing and being in Montana and drinking tea in your garden. It's not just any old garden; it's the garden that created the tea for you.
Yes.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Good. Well,
Mm.
thanks for coming on the show, Jillian, sharing with us that you don't have to wait till that magical traditional retirement age. You can take mini retirements along the way, and it could just be even a better way to go. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you for listening to the Retire Today podcast. We believe if you know more about your money, you will feel better about your money and you make better money decisions. Hi, I'm Jeremy Keil. If you'd like to learn how my team can help you get more income, pay less in taxes, and avoid big retirement mistakes, head on over to keilfp.com. That's KEILFP.com.